The pattern Cayce identified in 1936 is manifesting right now in ways that should awaken us to a fundamental shift in human consciousness. In his prophetic readings during an era when reincarnation was considered heretical in the West, Cayce insisted that humanity would eventually embrace this ancient truth, not through religious conversion, but through direct experience and scientific validation. Over the past decade, we've witnessed an unprecedented surge, major universities conducting past life research, children spontaneously recalling verifiable previous existences, near-death experiences documented in peer-reviewed journals, and mainstream media openly discussing soul continuity. This isn't coincidence. This is the exact consciousness threshold Cayce said would precede the Great Separation, when those ready to evolve beyond materialism would recognize the eternal nature of existence, while others would cling desperately to the illusion that this single lifetime is all there is. The acceleration you're sensing isn't imagination. It's the collective awakening Cayce witnessed in trance states 8 decades ago, arriving precisely as human consciousness reaches the crisis point that demands we remember who we really are. Have you noticed how many people around you are suddenly questioning whether this life is their first? Share your observations in the comments. During his prophetic readings throughout the 1930s and 1940s, Edgar Cayce made a prediction that seemed impossible at the time. Reincarnation would transition from fringe belief to mainstream understanding within a specific window of collective consciousness evolution. He wasn't speaking about religious conversion or New Age trends. He was describing a fundamental shift in how humanity perceives existence itself. A shift that always occurs at civilization thresholds when the old paradigm crumbles and a new understanding becomes necessary for survival. Cayce saw this pattern throughout history. He witnessed it in the Atlantean records. He observed it in ancient Egypt. He recognized it in every civilization that stood at the crossroads between spiritual evolution and material collapse. And he identified the specific signs that would indicate this consciousness shift was beginning in our time. What Cayce actually said about reincarnation's return to human awareness wasn't vague mysticism. It was precise pattern recognition based on spiritual law. He explained that souls incarnate in groups, returning together when specific lessons need completion. He described how global crises accelerate incarnation cycles, bringing back souls with experience navigating previous civilization collapses. He stated clearly that the period leading up to major Earth changes would see a dramatic increase in individuals remembering their soul continuity, not through belief systems, but through direct knowing. This wasn't wishful thinking. This was Cayce reading the Akashic records and reporting what he observed. A planned return of ancient souls specifically incarnated to guide humanity through transition. The spiritual law Cayce emphasized was unambiguous. Consciousness evolves through repeated experience, and civilizations reach crisis points when collective amnesia about soul continuity creates the delusion of separation. When humans forget they are eternal beings having temporary physical experiences, materialism dominates. Greed flourishes. Compassion diminishes. The illusion that this single lifetime is all that exists drives people to accumulate, dominate, and exploit without concern for consequences their souls will inevitably face. Cayce warned that this amnesia always reaches a breaking point, a moment when the universe itself intervenes to restore remembrance. We are living in that intervention window right now. Look at what's manifesting in our current moment. The University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies has documented over 2,500 cases of children with verifiable past life memories. Children who describe specific locations they've never visited, speak languages they've never learned, and identify deceased individuals they couldn't possibly know about through normal means. Dr. Jim Tucker's research has withstood rigorous academic scrutiny, publishing findings that demonstrate consciousness continuity beyond reasonable doubt. This isn't fringe speculation. This is mainstream academic institutions investigating what Cayce said would become undeniable: souls remembering their journey across lifetimes. The acceleration is undeniable. Near-death experience research has exploded from isolated case studies to systematic investigation involving thousands of documented incidents. Dr. Bruce Grayson's work at UVA, Dr. Sam Parnia's AWARE studies, and the growing body of evidence from cardiac arrest survivors all point toward the same conclusion. Consciousness exists independent of the physical brain. Patients accurately describe events that occurred while clinically dead. They encountered deceased relatives. They experienced life reviews showing the impact of their choices on others. This is exactly what Cayce described, the veil between physical and spiritual reality thinning as humanity approaches a consciousness threshold. Social media and global connectivity have created an unprecedented phenomenon. Millions of people worldwide sharing past life memories, regression experiences, and spontaneous recalls without the filter of institutional gatekeeping. The pattern Cayce predicted, individual awakening spreading virally through collective consciousness, is happening in real time. People are recognizing soul family members. They're understanding chronic phobias as past life trauma. They're making sense of unexplainable attractions and aversions through the lens of soul continuity. The mainstream dismissal is weakening. The scientific evidence is mounting. The personal experiences are too numerous to ignore. But here's what makes this moment historically significant. Cayce explicitly connected reincarnation awareness to civilization transition. He didn't present soul continuity as interesting spiritual trivia. He presented it as essential preparation for what's coming. Understanding reincarnation fundamentally changes how you navigate crisis. When you recognize this life as one chapter in an eternal journey, fear of death loses its paralyzing grip. When you understand that your choices create karma you'll inevitably experience, responsibility becomes non-negotiable. When you realize the people around you are souls you've known across multiple lifetimes, compassion deepens beyond superficial tolerance. This shift in consciousness is precisely what Cayce said would separate those who evolve through the coming changes from those who remain trapped in materialist terror. The parallel to previous civilizations is exact. Cayce's readings on Atlantis described a nearly identical pattern. As that civilization approached its final crisis, two distinct consciousness groups emerged. One group, the Sons of the Law of One, remembered their spiritual nature and prepared accordingly. They understood earth changes as purification, not punishment. They recognized their role as consciousness carriers into the next era. The other group, the Sons of Belial, remained locked in materialism, using increasingly desperate technological and political manipulation to maintain control. When the final shifts came, the remembering souls navigated transition consciously. The amnesia souls experienced it as catastrophe. The difference wasn't divine favor, it was consciousness level. We're watching this exact separation manifest today. Some people are awakening to soul continuity naturally, without effort. They're having spontaneous past life recalls. They're experiencing déjà vu that reveals genuine memory. They're meeting soul family and recognizing them instantly. Others are responding to the same information with violent resistance, clinging to materialist certainty because reincarnation threatens their entire worldview. This polarization isn't random. Cayce identified it as the inevitable sorting that occurs at civilization thresholds, souls choosing consciously or unconsciously which side of the transition they'll experience. If you like this video and want to see more content connecting Cayce's prophecies to observable patterns unfolding now, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps this information reach others who are recognizing these signs. The scientific validation accelerating around us wasn't supposed to happen according to materialist philosophy. Mainstream science insisted consciousness was brain-generated, that death ended awareness completely, that any evidence to the contrary was delusion or fraud. Yet the evidence keeps accumulating. Peer-reviewed journals are publishing reincarnation research. Major hospitals are conducting near-death studies. Neuroscientists are documenting consciousness operating without functional brain activity. The paradigm is cracking exactly as Cayce said it would, not through religious conversion, but through empirical observation that forces materialist assumptions to collapse. Consider the children. Cayce specifically predicted that younger generations would incarnate with stronger soul memory intact. He described this as intentional. Ancient souls returning with less amnesia precisely because they're needed as consciousness bridges during transition. What we're observing validates this completely. Children are describing past lives with detail that stuns researchers. They're demonstrating knowledge impossible to acquire through normal means. They're showing emotional responses to past life locations that reveal genuine memory, not imagination. These aren't rare anomalies. They're documented patterns occurring globally across cultures independent of religious background. The implications are staggering. If consciousness survives death, if we've lived before and will live again, then every major assumption of materialist civilization crumbles. Accumulation of wealth loses meaning when you can't take it with you, and will return to experience the world your greed created. Political power becomes hollow when you understand that dominance in this life creates karmic debt in the next. Violence against others becomes violence against your own soul when you recognize everyone as fellow eternal beings on the same journey. This is why reincarnation awareness terrifies power structures built on materialism. It dismantles the control mechanisms that depend on death fear and separation consciousness. Cayce emphasized repeatedly that reincarnation isn't escapism. It's accountability intensified. You don't get to avoid consequences by dying. You return to face them. The husband who abandons his family will experience abandonment. The corrupt leader will live under corrupt leadership. The environmental destroyer will inherit the destroyed environment. Karma isn't punishment from external deity. It's the universe ensuring every soul experiences both sides of every choice, developing wisdom through direct consequence. When humanity collectively remembers this truth, behavior transforms not through moral legislation, but through enlightened self-interest. The timing matters profoundly. Cayce didn't predict reincarnation awareness would increase during times of stability and abundance. He specifically connected it to the period immediately preceding major earth changes and civilization restructuring. Why? Because souls who remember their continuity navigate crisis from completely different consciousness. They understand physical death isn't annihilation. They recognize material loss as temporary. They comprehend that spiritual growth through challenge is the entire purpose of incarnation. When economic systems collapse, when environmental disasters accelerate, when social structures fragment, those with reincarnation consciousness maintain inner stability while others descend into panic. This is the preparation Cayce urged. Not stockpiling supplies, though practical preparation has value. Not seeking safe locations, though wisdom suggests avoiding obvious danger zones. The essential preparation is consciousness transformation. Awakening to your nature as an eternal being having a temporary human experience. Recognizing this crisis as one you've navigated before in other forms. Understanding your role as a consciousness anchor for others who haven't yet remembered. When you grasp that you chose to incarnate specifically for this transition moment, fear transforms into purpose. The historical parallel extends beyond Atlantis. Every civilization that forgot soul continuity eventually faced collapse that forced remembrance. Ancient Rome, in its final decadent phase, saw a surge of mystery school teachings about reincarnation, spreading through the population even as official institutions denied it. The pattern repeats because the spiritual law is unchangeable. Collective amnesia creates unsustainable materialism. Crisis forces awakening. Those who remember survive to build the next era. We're not experiencing something unprecedented. We're experiencing the same cycle Cayce documented across thousands of years of human history. What makes our moment unique is the speed and global scale. Information spreads instantaneously. Research findings reach millions within hours. Personal experiences shared online create collective validation impossible in previous eras. The awakening Cayce predicted would take decades is compressing into years. The consciousness shift that should unfold gradually is accelerating dramatically. This isn't random. It's responsive to the urgency of our collective situation. The faster humanity approaches the threshold, the faster the remembering accelerates. But remembering isn't automatic. Cayce was explicit about this. Souls incarnate with varying levels of amnesia based on their evolutionary stage and specific purpose. Some awaken easily because they've done this before. Others resist because this is among their first experiences navigating major transition. Neither is superior. Both are necessary. The key is recognizing where you are in your own awakening and taking responsibility for conscious evolution rather than remaining passively asleep. If you're watching this video and feeling recognition rather than skepticism, that's significant. Cayce described how souls remember through resonance. Information that aligns with your soul's knowledge feels immediately true, even if your conscious mind has no frame of reference. Information that contradicts your soul's journey feels false, regardless of external evidence. This internal knowing is your compass. The question isn't whether reincarnation is real. Your soul already knows. The question is whether you'll consciously align with that knowing or continue pretending this lifetime is all there is. The mainstream acceptance Cayce predicted is manifesting incrementally but undeniably. Major films and television shows now explore reincarnation themes without mockery. Best-selling books on near-death experiences dominate cultural conversation. Celebrities openly discuss past life regression. Academic conferences examine consciousness survival with scientific rigor. Each incremental shift normalizes what was previously taboo, preparing collective consciousness for the larger revelation Cayce said was inevitable. Humanity will remember it has lived before and will live again, transforming everything about how we organize society. This transformation won't be comfortable for everyone. Systems built on materialism will resist violently. Religious institutions that made eternal damnation or singular salvation their control mechanism will fight to maintain doctrinal authority. Political structures that depend on death fear to justify war and oppression will intensify propaganda against consciousness expansion. But Cayce was clear. Resistance is futile not because of divine decree, but because consciousness evolution operates by natural law. You cannot stop humanity from remembering truth any more than you can stop a seed from germinating. The question is only how gracefully or violently the transition unfolds. Your role in this moment is both individual and collective. Individually, you face the choice. Will you open to remembering your soul's journey, or will you cling to the comfortable fiction of single lifetime existence? Will you explore your own past life memories through regression, meditation, or spontaneous recall? Will you investigate the growing body of evidence with genuine curiosity rather than defensive skepticism? Will you recognize the people and situations in your current life as part of ongoing soul agreements that span multiple incarnations? These aren't casual questions. They determine which side of the great separation you experience. Collectively, your role is equally significant. As you remember, you become a lighthouse for others. Your calm in crisis becomes contagious. Your refusal to panic when systems collapse inspires those around you. Your demonstration that death fear is illusion gives others permission to question their own conditioning. Cayce emphasized that the awakened don't need to proselytize. They need only embody the consciousness that others will naturally gravitate toward when their own soul is ready. You're not here to convert anyone. You're here to remember yourself and shine clearly enough that others remember themselves in your presence. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your own experiences with reincarnation awareness in the comments. Are you noticing increased remembering in your own life? Have you had past life recalls that suddenly make current situations clear? This conversation matters. Your insights help others recognize they're not alone in this awakening. The evidence will continue mounting. More research will emerge validating consciousness survival. More children will demonstrate impossible knowledge of previous lives. More near-death experiencers will describe existence beyond physical death. More people will spontaneously remember who they were before this incarnation. The pattern is accelerating because we're approaching the point Cayce identified as critical mass, when enough souls remember that collective consciousness tips irrevocably toward the truth materialism tried to suppress. When that tipping point arrives, everything changes. Economic systems predicated on endless accumulation lose their psychological grip. Political systems built on dividing people into us versus them lose their power when we recognize everyone as eternal souls on the same journey. Environmental destruction becomes intolerable when we understand we'll return to inhabit whatever world we create now. War becomes unthinkable when we comprehend that violence against others is violence against ourselves across lifetimes. This is why reincarnation awareness terrifies existing power structures and why its return is inevitable, because it naturally creates the consciousness required for the next era of human civilization. Cayce saw this clearly. He described the coming age not as utopia, but as a civilization built by souls who remember. Those souls won't create perfection. They're still learning, but they'll create systems aligned with spiritual law rather than violating it. They'll organize society around cooperation rather than competition. They'll value spiritual growth over material accumulation. They'll recognize Earth as a school for consciousness development, not a resource to exploit and abandon. The transition between the dying age and the emerging one is what we're living through now. Understanding reincarnation is what allows you to navigate this transition consciously rather than experiencing it as incomprehensible catastrophe. This moment in history demands you make a choice, not someday when it's convenient, not when more evidence arrives. Now, while there's still time to prepare spiritually for what's accelerating toward us. Will you investigate reincarnation seriously, or will you dismiss it as fantasy and face the coming changes unprepared? Will you do the inner work of remembering who you are beyond this temporary personality, or will you cling to ego identity and experience its inevitable dissolution as trauma? Will you recognize this incarnation as one chapter in your eternal story, or will you pretend it's the whole book and panic when the chapter ends? Cayce's prophecy about reincarnation wasn't prediction, it was observation. He saw in the Akashic records what was already set in motion by spiritual law. Humanity would reach crisis. Crisis would force awakening. Awakening would restore remembrance of soul continuity. Those who remembered would navigate transition. Those who resisted would experience purification through difficulty until remembering became unavoidable. We're living in the window where remembering is still choice. Soon it will become necessity. The difference between choosing now and being forced later is the difference between conscious evolution and traumatic awakening. The consciousness shift happening around you isn't subtle if you're paying attention. Notice how many conversations now include past life references without mockery. Observe how mainstream culture increasingly portrays reincarnation as plausible rather than ridiculous. Recognize how many people you know are suddenly having unexplainable memories, synchronicities, and recognitions that only make sense through the lens of soul continuity. This is the pattern Cayce predicted manifesting in real time. The collective amnesia is lifting. The question is whether you'll lift with it or fight to remain asleep. Your preparation isn't about acquiring knowledge, it's about remembering what you already know at soul level. Every meditation where you touch timeless awareness, every moment of déjà vu that reveals genuine memory, every instant recognition of a soul you've known before, every phobia or attraction that makes no sense in this lifetime's context. These are cracks in the amnesia veil. Your job is to pay attention to those cracks, widen them intentionally, and step through into full remembrance of who you are beyond this temporary human form. The coming years will test everyone. Economic collapse, environmental crisis, social fragmentation, political upheaval, all the patterns Cayce identified are converging simultaneously. Those who understand reincarnation will face these challenges, knowing death isn't the end, material loss isn't ultimate tragedy, and soul growth through difficulty is precisely why they incarnated now. Those who deny soul continuity will face the same challenges, believing this life is all there is, that loss is permanent, and that crisis has no deeper purpose. The external events will be identical. the internal experience will be completely different. Cayce's ultimate message about reincarnation wasn't comfort, it was empowerment. You are not a helpless victim of random circumstance living one brief, meaningless existence. You are an eternal being on a deliberate journey through multiple incarnations, learning through direct experience, evolving toward reunion with divine consciousness. This current lifetime is one classroom among many. The crisis you're experiencing is curriculum you chose before incarnating. The people around you are soul family working through shared lessons. Nothing is random, nothing is punishment, everything is opportunity for consciousness development. This truth transforms how you meet what's coming. When the economic system you depend on collapses, you won't experience annihilation. You'll experience liberation from false security. When the environmental consequences of collective greed manifest, you won't experience random disaster, you'll experience karmic balancing you participated in creating. When social structures fragment and authority fails, you won't experience chaos. You'll experience the necessary dissolution that precedes reconstruction, aligned with spiritual law. Your consciousness level determines your experience. Reincarnation awareness is what elevates that consciousness above fear-based reaction. The separation Cayce described is already underway. You can observe it in your own social circles. Some people are opening rapidly, embracing expanded consciousness, questioning materialist assumptions, and exploring spiritual dimensions of existence. Others are contracting defensively, doubling down on materialism, attacking anything that threatens their worldview, and descending into fear-based tribalism. This isn't judgment, it's observation of consciousness choosing its evolutionary path. Everyone moves at their own pace, but the pace is accelerating now. The luxury of gradual awakening is ending. The crisis demands rapid evolution. Your final preparation is acceptance. Accept that you are an eternal being. Accept that you've lived before and will live again. Accept that everything you experience serves your soul's development. Accept that the coming changes are necessary purification, not divine punishment. Accept that your role is consciousness evolution, not physical survival at all costs. Accept that death is transition, not termination. Accept that loss is temporary, learning is permanent, and love is the only thing that transcends lifetimes. When you accept these truths not as beliefs, but as direct knowing, fear loses its power and you become unshakable regardless of external circumstances. The prophecy Cayce delivered 8 decades ago is manifesting now in undeniable ways. Reincarnation is returning to mainstream human consciousness, not through religious conversion, but through scientific validation, spontaneous remembering, and the urgent necessity of elevated awareness as civilization approaches threshold. You are witnessing the exact pattern Cayce observed in the Akashic records. The question remaining is simple but profound. Will you remember who you are before crisis forces you to? Or will you wait until remembering becomes trauma rather than grace? The window is open. The choice is yours. The time is now.